Welcome everyone to the President's Alumni Briefing. Happy to have you join us. I will allow for folks to come into the room, but I also wanted to just alert you to the Q&A function. While the president gives his presentation, you're welcome to drop some questions and answers or some questions into the chat. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Lemons.
Thank you, Joshunda, and good afternoon. Very happy to have you here with us this afternoon for this alumni town hall. I would like to begin with a little bit of an update on the college. Some of you may be very aware of what's happened in the college over the last 6 to 8 months, but some of you may not. So let me just give you some of the highlights here. So let's go to the next slide and talk about our students. Approximately 59% of our undergrads come from low-income households below $30,000, and the very large majority receive some form of financial aid, including, you can see 72% are Pell recipients, with many different languages spoken at home other than English. And other characteristics of our students, let's move on to the next one. If you look at Lehman compared to the other CUNY colleges, and we know CUNY is a very diverse university with its 270,000 plus students, but even there Lehman stands out. Lehman has the largest number of Hispanic students by both number and by the percentage of the student body. And also though, Lehman has the largest number and just absolute numbers of underrepresented minority students in its student body of all the CUNY senior colleges. So Lehman, as we know, has a very diverse student body. Let's go on to the next slide. And with that group of students, I think that we have a lot that we can feel really good about as a college, as a community, you as alums. Graduation 2020 did not look like this picture. This is probably a picture from graduation 2019, which is what everybody really would have loved to have. But despite that, we projected to graduate around 3,500 students this year. Last year was a record with around 3,600 students of all-time record for the college. And you see last year we had also the largest enrollment at the college since free tuition in 1975, 15,143. And let's go to the next slide. In a bit, I'll tell you what that's looking like for the fall. Lehman has made really terrific strides in academic momentum, in helping students to move towards their degree. We have a term we use, full-time, first-time freshman, FTFT. That is a metric that gets used nationally. And so we monitor that metric, of course. And what's interesting is that full-time, first-time freshmen, that's students earning, among that group, students who earned 30 or more credits during their first year is up 17% over the past 5 years. And of those who earned 20%, we've also seen 20 credits, we've also seen an increase of about 4% over that time. So students are finishing sooner because they're earning more credits. And we'll see that in the next slide. When we look at graduation, one of the statistics that I really like the best when we look at what we're doing as a college is, if you look at our student body, what would you predict our graduation rates would be? And we find that within CUNY's own predictions, we are 6% higher than predicted. Some other organizations, last summer, the New York Times published a study of around 300 colleges around the United States. And they found that Lehman was graduating students at 9%, a 9% higher rate than they predicted. So we're doing very well in that regard, and we really think that we have even more room to improve on that. 53% of our full-time, first-time freshmen are students who entered the college 6 years ago, looking at the cohort from 2013. And that's the number that did that, graduated in 6 years. And that is a 15% increase in comparison to the graduation rate for the 2009 cohort. So for a percentage change, that's a 40% increase in that rate in 5 years. Next slide. And if we look at 6-year graduation, 4-year graduation rates, 28% of full-time, first-time students who entered the college graduated in 4 years. That's a 7.5% increase in comparison to the 2011 cohort. Again, a 37% increase in that rate over 5 years. Next slide. What students are studying at Lehman College has evolved over time. CUNY has had a big priority to increase the number of students in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And of course, we love all our majors and we think they're all important. And so we promote all of them. But it is interesting that we've had a 28% increase in students enrolled in STEM over the past 5 years. And because enrollment itself has increased dramatically over the last 5 years, the total number of students, that 28% represents a very large increase in STEM majors. Next slide. This is probably the most important metric for evaluation of colleges that's used outside of the college itself. How do your graduates do when they enter the workforce or when they continue on in the workforce, but they now have a bachelor's degree? Students earn $40,000 annually their first year out from Lehman College. That's the third highest among CUNY's senior colleges, and it's $2,500 a year above the senior college average. We began a program with an organization called Braven this year to address something, though, that is not apparent necessarily in these numbers. We're very happy that we're doing so well within CUNY, but we also know that students that come from underrepresented groups don't do as well as other students when they graduate from college in terms of their salary. This data comes from Braven. Only 25% of 1.2 million low-income first-generation college grads attain a quality first job. So what we're working with Braven is connecting students through a mentoring program and preparing them for the job market. And so far, we're very pleased. We started this program last year, and we're very hopeful that this approach will actually raise that number significantly over time as we continue to work on this. Next slide. And this really boils down to something that's called social mobility. The Chronicle of Higher Education ranked Lehman third among four-year public colleges in the nation for social mobility or mobility rate. The American Council on Education ranked Lehman first among Hispanic serving institutions for this same statistic. And this is what this really means is if students start at your college coming from families that are in the bottom quintile in terms of family income, they move to the top 3 quintiles after graduation as they move into their careers, then that is the mobility index that we're looking at here in these numbers. So it's pretty clear that Lehman is really a mobility engine and is performing a really critical role in the Bronx, in its borough, in the city, in the New York region for, particularly as you saw in the demographics that I presented earlier, for students who are coming from families of very modest means. And so we recognize, I think this has been very clear at Lehman College for a long time, that the quality education that we provide has a lot of benefits, but among them is that it enables students to rise socioeconomically, and that's really important for the quality of their life, for the quality of their family life, for their children. Next slide. We have a lot to brag about, and we don't really hesitate to do that. Lehman students have been winning more and more awards. In 2018 to 19, students won 70 awards totaling $2.3 million. This past year, 2019 to 20, we were once again named a Fulbright top performing institution and also a Gilman program top producing institution. And this year, students actually garnered awards that totaled around $4 million in their value to those students. So look at the next slide. You can see a list of just a few of the awards that our students are winning. These are nationally competitive awards. And these are awards that have actually made Lehman one of the top schools in CUNY. Last year, we were the top school for Fulbrights in CUNY. And this year, I think we're second with 3 students. Last year, we had 4 Fulbrights. So our students are doing very well. And that I think is really important to stress, because when we talk about the socioeconomic backgrounds of our students, it can lead someone who really doesn't understand to lower their expectations. But you can see from what we're looking at here that we don't lower our expectations, because we know our students are smart and capable, and given the opportunities, they excel. Next slide. Now, turning to the topic which has really overtaken all of us, how have we handled COVID? Let's go to, yes, that's great. See if we can stay on the next slide. Back up 1 if we can. So this has obviously been a big challenge for the college, like it has for every college and really every part of society. We very abruptly went to distance education. We had a week hiatus from March 12 to March 19. And March 19, with only about 10 days of prior notice, we went fully distance learning. 5 partially online courses went fully online. Over 800 courses that had some web features to them went fully online. And then almost 1,400 courses that were in-person classes without any of those features also went fully to distance learning. That was a huge task for faculty, it was a huge task for staff, and it was a huge task for students. And really, I think we all were just amazed at what happened. I think if we had been asked to predict how that would go, we might have had some pretty dire predictions. And I don't mean to suggest at all that it was easy or that it was smooth or everything went perfectly, because it didn't, it really couldn't. But we did all this, and we got our students through the term, and we had many students that were lined up to graduate and needed to finish the term. And as I mentioned, we managed to do that for almost all of them. Next slide says a little more detail about what happened. When we abruptly shifted to fully distant education in March, we were fortunate because we were already in the lead in CUNY. 25% of our courses were already partially or totally online. That was double the CUNY Senior College average and the most of any college within CUNY. 60% of our graduates and undergraduate students had already taken at least 1 online course. And over 500 of our faculty had taught online already. So we didn't go into that very sudden change without preparation. And I think that really helped a lot. But of course, that left 75% of courses still that where there was really no preparation for doing that, and where faculty with excellent help of staff and their colleagues were able to do that. Next slide. So what about students? Because it's one thing to be able to deliver classes online, whether you do it through Zoom or through asynchronous means, web materials that we put on Blackboard, which is our course site. But we knew we had students who did not have laptops that were sufficient, and we knew that they were not going to be able to complete courses using a handheld device. So we purchased as many Chromebooks and iPads as we could. The university also did that, and by the summer we had loaned out 800 devices to students. We also provided faculty with laptops and Chromebooks, Chromebooks and iPads, because they also had a number of faculty and staff members that were not really set up as well as they needed to be able to do their work remotely. So this was a huge shift for everybody. We worked very hard to get these devices to students. We actually shipped them individually to students. And we didn't get everybody, I'm sure, but we got most students provided with what they needed to complete the term. The next slide. No surprise that taking care of our students, other than just completing their courses with a laptop, wasn't the only issue. Nearly 90% of the students who were using our food bank responded that they were often worried about running out of food, and 31% indicated they had often run out of food before they had money to make more purchases, and nearly over half indicated they sometimes did. So the Lehman Food Bank continued to operate after we went to distance education for a while in person, but soon we knew that we would have to go completely remote, and so we provided students with cards that they could use to purchase food. This has been an ongoing need. Next slide. And we know that it will continue to be. Students and their families really faced all kinds of challenges. We know from survey results that at least 40% lost all of their means of employment. And the Bronx was the highest hit per capita, had the highest per capita infection rate in the borough. So our immediate environment was very hard hit. And there's a need for many, many things. So what we've done is we have tried to respond to that as best we could. And let's go to the next slide. And the next one, please. So we launched the campaign for Lehman College because we knew that the needs were going to be large and they were going to continue through the summer and into the fall, and no doubt into the spring as well. So if you could keep hitting the forward, we'll go through this slide. So we had a goal of raising $1 million. And that is for the Lehman Food Bank. It's for emergency loans, micro grants that could be used to cover rent, that could be used to pay whatever was really an emergency need of a student that was really making their life impossible. It was also for scholarships, and it was for operating for program support. So we set a high goal, and I'm really happy to say that we actually reached that goal. Next slide. So our goal is 1.5 million. And the next. And I have to thank you, because I'm sure that among those that are on this town hall today are a number who helped out with that. And I really can't thank you enough. We had very wide participation, faculty and staff, and students alone raised $50,000 in just a matter of a few days for this campaign. We had other organizations that came in, the Robin Hood Foundation with $150,000, the Petrie Foundation with substantial contributions to this, as well as alumni who made substantial gifts, and large and small. And all of that has really added up, and it's helped us to supplement what came through the CARES Act from Congress. The CARES Act from Congress provided for CUNY about $136 million across its campuses, and that was distributed in direct aid. An average size of the grant that went to a student was about $540. And so we knew that we would need to supplement that significantly, and we'll continue to need to do that because, for one thing, not every student was eligible for that CARES Act funding. Undocumented students were not eligible. Any student that was not Title IV ineligible could not get CARES, that was not Title IV eligible, could not get CARES Act funding. So we knew that we would need to raise as much as we could to fill that in. We're continuing to raise money for the Lehman campaign. And we also are still distributing some CARES Act fund to students because after all, we know that if students can't manage their lives and just the basics of their lives, they're not going to be able to continue with college. So next slide. Going into the fall, I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what that's looking like for us. In the fall and the summer, first of all, our enrollment was interestingly up about 13% above the previous summer. And that was, I think across CUNY, it was around also 13 to 14% above the previous summer. Our fall enrollment right now is about 3 to 4% lower than last fall, but we're still enrolling students, still registering students, and we don't really know what that number will be when we finally start the term. As you know, this has been very uncertain ground to be on for everybody. Our goal over the last 5 months has to been minimize the presence of people on campus, because when the more people we have on campus, the more chance there is of spreading infection. And the health has been the first priority that we wanted to maintain. And so we've done everything we can to minimize presence on campus. So summer was entirely online, and the fall is about 95% plus online courses. We will have some courses that will be on campus because they're courses that really just cannot be done in any way successfully unless you can get into the facility like a science lab or an art studio or a performance class. So we will have some of those classes, but those classes are being arranged very differently logistically and physically, so that we're actually going for a 10-foot spacing between students. If we have students in or anybody in a shared space on campus, we're doing everything we can to have adequate airflow, maximize it, bringing in outside air as much as possible. Our intent is to keep everybody safe. And then, of course, we want to help students to make progress on their academic programs. We also are continuing with our student services, mostly remotely, but there are some student services that will be on campus in the fall. Again, though, done in a way that we feel is safe. Everybody that comes to campus screens ahead of time. We're just coming online, or will be by the end of the month, with a little app that everybody does before they leave home. Gives them the green light or the red light. They have to have the green light to come on campus, and then it's masks on for everybody all the time, and spacing and all the other safeguards that we can put in place. And I feel very confident that what we have set up is a plan that really will maintain everybody's safety and health, and is still going to allow us to have a fall term that will be successful. Next slide. We again are continuing to provide loaner laptops, and we've got I think around 800 now that are ready to go out for the fall to students that need them, and also working on internet access. Some students, once we get them a laptop, they still may not have good internet access. So we know that's a critical need as well, and we are paying attention to that, and hopefully they will be able to provide access for all the students who need it. Next slide. So moving forward, I want to bring us around to something that's been really a major goal of ours since 2017, and it's the 90 by 30 challenge, awarding 90,000 or more degrees and credentials from the beginning of that challenge in 2017 through 2030. That goal addresses something that we feel is a primary part of our mission as a college, and that is addressing the educational needs in the Bronx and in New York City. And we're really happy, and I'm happy to say from just what I showed you earlier in this update, that our enrollment and our graduation numbers are keeping us on pace to reach that goal. It's a very ambitious goal. We have to continue that. Now we're in a time when we know that that's going to be more challenging to do, but we're very committed to continuing to do that. And so we're moving ahead with that. We're also just finishing a strategic plan. By this fall, we'll have that completed. That will be the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. Next slide. And last slide. So I want to again thank you for attending. And I want to go to questions. So I'm going to have a look at now what's coming up in the questions in the chat. And we'll see what we have here in terms of questions. So there's a question here, it's really good question to think about. If we want to help with resources other than money, what can we do? Is there an active alumni board? Absolutely, there is. We have a great alumni board, and we have a new, actually as of this summer, we have a new chair of that board, Lawrence Fauntleroy, and he is very engaged. And I really encourage everyone who hasn't been connected with the alumni board to get in contact. You can get in contact through the website. And absolutely, there are many ways that alumni contribute other than through funding. One of the things I mentioned is our interest in making better connections for our graduates into potential jobs, internships, and experiential kind of learning. Those are the kinds of opportunities that alumni can be very helpful to us in identifying. It's very difficult and challenging, actually, many times, to find opportunities like that, and alumni can really open up a lot of doors and make us aware of opportunities that otherwise we really wouldn't know about. So definitely, please engage. If you're alum and you haven't been engaged, do get engaged with the alumni group, and make yourself available to contribute, because there are just many ways that you can do that. Wanted to mention, as we're doing this session today, I will but put your questions into the chat, because I will be paying attention to the chat where the questions will come in. Question about emergency loans. Do they have to be paid back? No, they're not loans, they're grants. And so we don't expect students to pay them back. We understand very well that when students get through a tough time, it doesn't mean that they're going to be in a situation where they really can easily pay back funds that we might have awarded to them. So no, we don't ask them to pay those back. They're not like what might happen with a loan program. These are grants. So here's a question about the Encore program, if it's still on for the fall. I'm going to look for an answer to come in on that one, because I want to make sure you get the exactly right answer for that. So we'll wait and we'll see if we get some other information. If not, we will respond. We'll put this up later. Will we have a memorial for one or more of our famous alumni who died this May? Andre Harrell, who started Uptown Records. We have not yet planned any memorials. We've actually had, we know we've had a number of alumni who did not survive COVID-19. We've had students, and we've had staff, and we've had faculty. There's really no category within the college community that hasn't been affected in this way by COVID-19. We're really going to be waiting to see sometime later what we can do to memorialize our alums and students, faculty, and staff. And we don't have a plan right now of what we will do, but we will do something. We will acknowledge all of those whose families are in agreement that they would like us to do that. You know, that's a very personal, very private matter and decision that families need to make. Some families really just do not want that kind of attention. And so we never do anything in a public way until that really has been approved and the family really is good with that. How can you contribute to the food bank? So what you can do, if you go on to the Lehman College website, you will find links that will take you right into where you can donate. And if you contribute to the campaign for Lehman College, your funds can go to the food bank. And we will be so grateful for any funds that go to the food bank, because so far, we've been able to respond to almost all students who have come forward and needed help, but we're always worried about not being able to do that. So if you can, please do. It will be hugely appreciated. So question about Braven. I mentioned the Braven program, which is the mentoring program that we began last fall and that we're continuing this fall with a new cohort. Do we have a demand for mentors that Braven isn't meeting? Braven is first of all, let me just say that I think if you think that you'd like to be a mentor, definitely get in touch with us because we'd like to know about that and find one way or another for you to do that. Braven is a program that works through a number of companies that it identifies, and many of those companies actually become donors to the program in terms of funding, but they also make some of their employees, mostly middle level and sometimes even junior level executives, to be mentors. And those mentors are trained by Braven. And then what they do is they meet with a small cohort of students, about 8 students, and they meet with them for a course, which is a 3-credit course that they do through one term. And I've sat in on those courses. I've watched students. I know that students love those courses. But after the course, they stay in touch with that mentor as they develop their resumes and work on other aspects of getting ready to enter the job market. So for Braven, they are, one of the things they're bringing to us as an organization is they're arranging mentors from those companies that they have lined up. But let me reiterate, if you're interested in being a mentor, please get in touch with us because we will find a way to make that connection. Will testing for COVID for students be mandatory? Actually, we, as a university, CUNY will not have mandatory testing for students. In fact, CUNY does not have, is not planning to have a systematic testing program. At least at the moment, that is the plan. CUNY had a task force. It was a COVID-19 task force. I actually was on that task force, and the part of that I worked on the task force actually was testing and screening. And there are a number of reasons why we're not doing testing right now. One of the reasons is that testing is very expensive still to do, particularly when you talk about comprehensive testing. And one of the reasons that we're not needing to do it for all our students are actually going to be online, or be on campus. They're going to be online, so they won't be coming to campus. But also, we're not doing testing because we're using screening as a way to try to keep infectious individuals from coming to campus. And we're not using testing because testing is problematic. You've probably followed it like we all have. One of the issues with testing is there are constantly issues with testing reliability. We saw that in a very high profile way last week with the governor of Ohio, but he is not at all unusual. Testing has really so far been proved not to be the most reliable way. Screening isn't 100% either. It's not even 75% necessarily because of asymptomatic individuals. But we're not using testing because we just didn't see, even for those students that are coming on campus and staff coming on campus, that it would be useful and it would add a layer of security. So we're not going to be doing that, but that is something nobody will be surprised if that changes. If our testing capacity goes up, if the cost goes down, if we start having more students on campus in the spring, then we may find that we're going to change our direction on that, and we will be doing it. By the way, Lehman College had the first drive-through testing site in the Bronx. It was in our parking lot across Goulden Avenue, and that's been operating up until now. So, question about what would be the factors that would be considered about having in-person classes for the spring term? It's a really good question. And, let me just tell you something that I learned last week that I found a little bit surprising, and I found to be a very strong statement. I'm a biologist and I spent my research career doing biomedical research. And the organization that I always had, one of the main organizations I was a part of, is experimental biology. Experimental biology has a large annual meeting every April. 15 to 20,000 people attend that meeting from a number of different biomedical research societies. I got an email last week that Experimental Biology 2021 will be virtual. There will be no in-person meeting. So if a biomedical research society has made a decision they're not having an in-person meeting, and they've made that decision now for April of 2021, I think that tells us something about what we may be looking at in the spring. Nothing certain, but what it tells me is that we probably are going to be looking at something very similar to what we're looking at right now. I know we have a promise of a vaccine, and the experts that I feel confident in are saying 3 to 6 months to have it be effective, to be shown effective. And 3 to 6 months, that puts us well into the spring term. So the first factor that, and to me, probably the only factor that would really change the situation from where we are right now, is having a widely disseminated and successful vaccine. And until we have that, our situation is really no different than it was in March, except we know now what precautions to take. We know how to protect ourselves and to protect others, but we also know that we can't really let up on that. And as I mentioned, the first line of defense in protecting against infection is just reducing the density of people. So I would say right now, the primary factor for whether we will change and have more in-person classes in the spring term will be what happens with the vaccine. Will students have in-person access to the library? They will not in the fall term. We have worked really hard, and we have added online resources for students so that they can get access to the things that they would need in terms of reference. And that doesn't solve the issue of students who need to come to campus if they need computer resources, if they were used to coming to the library or one of the computer centers to get onto a computer. That's different. And what we will try to do, to the degree that we can do that in a safe way, is make computer spaces available for students. They would have to make an appointment. Of course, they have to screen beforehand, and then take all the precautions, including a mask, probably using a disposable keyboard cover in order to do that. What we're really trying to do, as I mentioned before, is to equip students at home. And we know we have students that, for instance, a Chromebook laptop isn't really adequate for their needs because they need a higher powered laptop. And for those students, we are providing those computers. So we're really trying to empower students to be off campus where we think they're going to be the safest. So are there construction projects slated for the college? Yes, there are. First of all, you may know that we are ready to break ground for a new nurses building. That nursing building it's a $75 million building where the bookstore now stands, or I should say the former bookstore. And that work is going to proceed. We have other projects that are proceeding as well. Happy to say that we also received more counsel from the city council, thanks to our erstwhile city council member, Cohen. Andrew Cohen has been a terrific friend of the college, and last year was able to secure $3 million for projects this year, even in this really, really tough budget year for the city, when overall the budget's reduced quite a lot for the city. We still were able to obtain $2 million in funding for two projects that will go forward. One is a key project that already had several million dollars lined up for it. Now we have all the funding for it, and that is the renovation of space for the social work program. That's in Carmen Hall. And then another project, which is in the old gym building, is we got funding now to complete our teaching and learning center, which again has had prior funding, and now we have all the funding together that we need to move ahead for that project. So those projects and others, the amphitheater project is moving ahead, and there are other projects going ahead on campus. Of course, we have to have the same precautions for all the crews that are coming in that we do for anybody else coming on campus. And so we're working very hard to maintain a safe environment. So here's a really important question about alumni. What about alumni who are trying to find jobs after graduation? What kind of support systems are available to alumni after they've graduated? You know, that is, I think that's a really good question, but it's a question that I would like to give a more detailed answer to via the website and via communication that can follow up this forum. We actually have an ability to email all of you after the forum, after the town hall is over. And so what I'd like to do is, for those questions either that we're not going to be able to get to and answer today, or questions where we just need more detail to really make it a meaningful answer, we'll reply, we'll send an email out to all of you to answer those questions. So what about, this is an area we haven't really touched on at all, which is what will happen to music performance courses, the Lehman Orchestra, and I'll just add into that what will happen to performances at the Lehman Center, Lehman Stages, all those wonderful performance venues that we've been used to every year. All of our events for this academic year will be canceled. They won't go on, not live, but we will have performances through the year that will be done in a virtual mode. And what is happening with some of the, not performances, but with training, for instance, I mentioned that some of the classes on campus that require performance space will go on. For instance, we will have dance class, but with a reduced number of students, maintaining space. We're fortunate that we have some very nice dance rehearsal spaces that are large enough to really allow for that. And so we'll have the training going on, but the performances themselves will not be going on. I think it's safe to say through this academic year. That means through spring of 21. That's a huge loss for our community, and we're no different in that way than virtually everyone else. But again, safety is our first requirement, and that's our first goal. And so that is most likely what will happen through the spring of 21. Will ticket holders get refunds? again, you can, if you have tickets for, already purchased tickets for the Lehman Center or for one of the other venues, you should go to their website and find out the information about what happens if you've got a ticket and you haven't gotten a refund yet. Let me just cruise along here and see if there are other questions that I've missed. One of the questions that no one has asked, which usually gets asked, it's being asked probably less frequently now, but one of the questions that we were asked many times a month or two ago, particularly in May, around the time of graduation, was, will we be able to have an in-person graduation for the class of 2020? And in May, I was very reluctant to make any commitments because I personally didn't feel very confident about what would happen with the pandemic. It turns out that my reluctance was warranted. And there was, of course, a lot of interest in, can't we have an in-person graduation in the fall? Well, can we have one in the spring? And we just don't know. It may be that by spring of 21, we're going to be very pleasantly surprised to find out that we've got a vaccine, that most everybody has had it, that vaccine is effective, and we can have events again. Let's really hope that's what happens. But right now, we'll just have to wait and see, and we don't. We're not going to have fall sports, and like most athletics across the country's colleges and universities, the sports seasons have either been canceled or there are sports that are taking place, but they're taking place with no spectators. So that's the case for us as well. And again, it's a huge loss, and we're all going to miss it. So we've come to the end of the questions, and I want to thank everyone who submitted a question today. It's been great to know what's on your mind and to hopefully answer a number of these questions. And we'll send you an email after this session within a day or two with some more details when there were details that were asked for. So again, I want to thank you as alums for your support of Lehman College. It means a huge amount. We count on your support. We really want you to be engaged as alums. You have a lot to offer, not just the money that you can contribute, but in many other ways. So please stay connected and stay tuned. Thank you all again, and have a good afternoon.